had just stepped out of a long strategy meeting when my phone buzzed. I ignored it. My head was pounding, my inbox overflowing, and I was already late for dinner plans with Maya. But when I checked it a few minutes later and saw Mom flashing across 3 missed calls and a text that read, "Please call when free, it's urgent," I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It was rare for my mother to use the word urgent. In our family, emergencies were unspoken until they couldn't be hidden anymore. I dialed back as I walked toward the parking garage. The call picked up on the second ring. "Hello, Ian." My mother's voice was shaky, breathless. "Hey, Ma, what's wrong?" There was a pause just long enough to make my heart skip. "It's Annia's tuition. We're short, very short." I leaned against the concrete wall of the garage, the metal railing pressing into my back. "How short are we talking?" She hesitated, then exhaled heavily. 60,000. I closed my eyes. "Ma, how are you 60,000 short? I thought the first year was already covered." "It was," she said quickly, almost defensively. "But the school raised the fees, and your father's job, he's not getting the hours he used to. Our savings are almost gone. You know how much we've been struggling." I could hear her pacing. She did that when she was nervous, walked in small, anxious circles. I even tried applying for a second mortgage. She continued, her voice cracking. "But the bank said no, our credit's not good enough. We didn't want to come to you, Beta, but we don't have anyone else." I rubbed my forehead, the pressure already building behind my eyes. My parents had always made sacrifices for me and Anaya. Growing up, we weren't rich, but we never felt poor. Diwali gifts were smaller, vacations were road trips instead of flights, and our dinners were often lentils and rice. But there was warmth. Love, security. Now I had a well-paying job in Seattle. Product manager at a major tech firm. I had worked hard, saved harder. I had almost $80,000 in my savings account, meant for the down payment on a townhouse I'd been eyeing for months. 60,000. That would wipe most of it clean. I swallowed. "I'll think about it, Ma. I'll call you tomorrow." Her silence was telling. She'd hoped I'd say yes immediately, but this wasn't pocket change. This was my future. That night, I didn't sleep well. I stared at the ceiling, the city lights painting restless shadows across my bedroom. I imagined Anaya, 18 and hopeful, standing outside a university lecture hall with a backpack full of dreams. She was smart, smarter than I ever was. She wanted to be a journalist, had already been published in her school paper a dozen times. How could I be the reason she didn't make it? The next morning, I called my mother again. "I'll send the money," I said, "but I need you to promise me it's only for tuition, not housing, not anything else." "Of course, Beta, of course. Thank you, Ian, you're saving us." Her relief was so palpable it made my chest hurt. "I'll transfer it tonight, but please be transparent with me from now on," she promised. I hung up, opened my banking app, and with a deep breath, transferred $60,000 to my parents' account. The confirmation email arrived seconds later, stark and cold. "Transfer complete. $60,000 sent to recipient." I stared at it for a long time. Something inside me ached. It wasn't the money. It was the feeling of letting go of something I'd built so carefully. A future I had sketched in quiet moments. A kitchen I'd imagined cooking in. A balcony I'd dreamed of sipping coffee on. I was trading it all for family, and at the time, that felt like the right kind of sacrifice. 3 weeks after sending the money, I made a last-minute decision to fly home for the weekend. I hadn't been back since Annia's high school graduation. Between work, travel, and life in Seattle, I had distanced myself more than I realized. And after sending $60,000 without so much as a thank you from my sister, something inside me felt off. I needed to see them. I needed to feel sure I hadn't been foolish. My mother's face lit up when she opened the door. "Ian, you didn't even tell us you were coming. I wanted it to be a surprise," I said, forcing a smile. The house smelled like turmeric and incense, familiar, comforting, but there was a tension in the air, something brittle, like a string stretched too tight. "Where's Dad?" I asked, slipping off my shoes. "He went to the store to get mangoes, your favorite," I nodded. Anaya was upstairs, supposedly catching up on schoolwork. I hadn't seen her yet. The girl I'd worked so hard to support couldn't even come down to say hello. I tried not to take it personally. Later that evening, after a strained dinner full of small talk, my mother handed me her iPad with a sheepish look. "Can you fix this, the Wi-Fi isn't connecting again. You know I don't understand these things." I took it to the living room couch, grateful for something to focus on. As I reset the network settings, a pop-up notification slid across the screen. "Your trip to France memories from 3 weeks ago." I blinked. France, I tapped it before I could second. Guess myself. The photo album opened automatically. First image, my parents smiling on a balcony, lavender fields stretching behind them like a painting. Provence. Second image, my mother, wrapped in a silk scarf, laughing with a glass of rosé in her hand. A vineyard tasting room. Third, my father, posing in front of a Louis Vuitton store, sunglasses tilted, a bag hanging from his wrist. My hands grew cold. The images kept coming. Cheese plates, cafe breakfasts in Montmartre, selfies in front of the Eiffel Tower. Hotel suites with chandeliers, a boat cruise on the Seine, designer shopping bags, smiles, champagne, and sunshine. I felt sick. I checked the metadata on the photos. The dates matched. They had gone on this vacation just days after I sent the $60 euro. The iPad slid from my lap and hit the floor with a dull thud. I stared at it, heart pounding, mind racing. Blood roaring in my ears, I stood up, grabbed the device, and walked back to the kitchen, where my mother was rinsing dishes. She turned and smiled. All fixed. I held up the iPad. France, her face froze. "What?" "Don't lie to me, Ma. I saw the photos. Provence, Paris, wine tours right after I sent the money. You said it was for Anya's tuition." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then, like a dam breaking, her defensiveness flooded in. "We haven't been on a vacation in 15 years, Ion. We needed it. We were drowning. Do you know what stress does to your health?" I stared at her in disbelief. "You lied to me." "We didn't lie," she snapped. "Anya still needed help. She got some scholarship, but we covered the rest. You're making such a big deal out of this." My father entered through the back door just then, mangoes in hand. "What's going on?" I didn't even wait. I turned to him, voice shaking. "Did you spend the money I sent for Anaya's college on a trip to France?" His face twitched. Part of it. He set the bag down and sighed. "We thought we deserved something. After everything we've done for you kids, don't we deserve to live a little?" I felt my world split into two, the one I thought I lived in, and the one I was clearly in now. $60,000, I said quietly. "I gave you everything I had. I wiped out my house fund, my future, for what? So you could pose with wine glasses in Provence. We raised you," my mother hissed. "Do you think you'd even have that money if it weren't for us?" That was the moment I realized this wasn't about money. It was about control, guilt, entitlement wrapped in the soft silk of family duty. I left that night. Didn't pack, didn't say goodbye. I drove to a motel on the edge of town and sat on a stiff mattress, staring at the blank TV screen, hands still trembling. Betrayal doesn't always arrive in betrayal's clothing. Sometimes it wears a familiar face and smells like cumin and jasmine and childhood. I didn't speak to my parents for 2 full months after I left. They tried calling, messaging, even sent a handwritten letter, the kind my mother used to write in my lunchbox as a kid. But it didn't work this time. Nothing felt sincere anymore, just a desperate attempt to hold onto the control they thought they'd always have. It wasn't the money that broke me, it was the lie, the way they looked me in the eye and twisted truth into something disposable. $60,000 didn't just pay for a vacation. It cost me the last piece of trust I had left for them. But I wasn't going to yell, or beg, or play the dutiful son anymore. I was going to document everything. Quiet vengeance. It started with an email, cold, professional, and typed with clinical precision. Subject, loan documentation $60 0 transfer on March 15. Dear Mom and Dad, I am formalizing the transfer of $60 0 as a loan provided in good faith for Anya's tuition. Given recent revelations, I am requesting full repayment over 36 months with 5% annual interest. Attached is the legally binding promissory note. Please review and sign within 10 business days. Regards, Ion. They didn't respond to the first one. The second one got a reply. This is insulting. You're treating us like strangers. I didn't reply. Instead, I had my friend, an attorney, send a follow-up, this time from his firm's official letterhead. I knew they wouldn't pay. That wasn't the point. The point was letting them know, I'm not your safety net anymore. Anaya. A few weeks later, I called Anaya. I expected anger, confusion, maybe even silence. Instead, she sounded tired. Hey, she said. Hey. There was a long pause. Then, I know about the money. I saw the photos on Mom's iPad. I blinked. You did, yeah. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to believe anymore. We talked for nearly 2 hours. About how she'd been feeling like a tool in their guilt-laced manipulation. How she'd dropped out of the university a month ago, not because of money, but because she was burning out under expectations that were never hers to carry. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have called. Thank you for trying to help me. I'm going to figure things out on my own now. She moved in with me 3 weeks later. She took a part-time job at a local news blog and started freelancing. She had her own checking account, her own bills, and her first taste of independence. And in time, we stopped talking about our parents, not because we forgot, but because we stopped giving them space in our lives. Cutting the cord that summer, my bank changed. So did my phone number, my emergency contacts, my will. I had finally understood that family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by mutual respect, truth, and boundaries. For years, I thought being a good son meant unconditional support. But good doesn't mean blind. Love doesn't mean sacrifice without limits. So I cut the cord. No more surprise checks. No more guilt-chained favors. No more being the ATM they forgot had a heart. They sent one last letter around Diwali. It was full of apologies wrapped in self-pity. We made a mistake, it read. But haven't you made any in your life? I didn't reply. France, again 2 years later, I stood in the south of France, not as a betrayed son, but as a business owner. I had left my corporate job 6 months earlier to start a remote consultancy helping startups streamline their product pipelines. It took off faster than I expected. I had clients in London, Berlin, and Amsterdam, and finally, I bought a place. It wasn't massive, a 2-bedroom stone cottage just outside Aix-en-Provence, vineyards on one side, lavender fields on the other. The air smelled like rosemary and warm soil. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, I sat on my balcony sipping a glass of red wine local, of course. The breeze was soft, the sky blushed purple, and for the first time in years I felt completely, undeniably free. Then I remembered the iPad, the photos, their smug smiles in front of the Eiffel Tower. I opened my laptop and wrote a postcard through an online service. It was addressed to my parents' home back in California, just one sentence. Thanks for showing me what not to do with love and money. Aix-en-Provence. I hit send, and then I went back to my wine. Epilogue. What they never taught me, they taught me how to ride a bike, how to say please and thank you, how to fold my hands during prayer and show respect to elders, but they never taught me the difference between love and obligation, between giving and being taken from. That I had to learn on my own, painfully, slowly, and with scars that still ache in quiet moments. But I also learned something else. Revenge doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is peace. Success, distance, and a silence so full of power, it echoes louder than any scream.